Hi, welcome to Women of Worth Wednesday. I am so excited to be here with my beautiful sister, Shevaun. Many of you may not know that this is my sister. When I advertised, I didn't share that. We're hiding in the car for a reason. We are talking today about military lives and wives, and there's kids that are loud in the house. So I figured that the car was an appropriate setting for being a military wife and mom. I'm so happy. I drove all this way to do Women of Worth Wednesday with my sweet, beautiful sister. We're in San Diego today, and most of you that follow Women of Worth Wednesday know that we usually come from Utah. So we're excited to be here today and talk about some of the experiences that my amazing, strong hero sister has gone through. So let me introduce you to her. But before we get started, please post where you're watching from and where you're streaming from so that we can connect with people from all over the world on Women of Worth. And so this is Shevaun. Tell us a little bit. Mom of three.
Mom of three. I have a 10-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and a 3-year-old son. My husband and I have been married almost 12 years now, which is totally crazy.
I know, because I was at the wedding. Well, I changed Siobhan's diapers, so it's even crazier, but you know, that she's a mom of 3, and you've been married 12 years, and how long have you been a military family?
So, Jake always felt like he was supposed to be in the military or some sort of government work. It totally wasn't on our radar when we first got married.
So that's key. Not every military wife knows she's signing up for this experience.
A lot of people that are not, even in the military, they'll say, well, you knew what you were getting into. I'm like, false. Did not know.
You knew who you were marrying. And that you were supposed to marry this man, but you didn't realize that the military would be part of the journey.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. The spirit definitely played a part in us getting married, and after we had our first child, Jake just knew that he was supposed to join, and they had a really great program where he could finish going to school and get paid as an active duty member of the military, but he was able to finish up school, and then he owed them 4 years after that, and we've just stayed in.
So what's interesting there's a lot of military families out there, but my brother-in-law is a naval officer, which means he's had deployments where he is on a sub, which really limits conversations.
Yeah, he was on a submarine in Hawaii.
How many times did he do a sub? Didn't he do 3 tours?
He did 1 tour on the submarine, but he was on the submarine for 3 years, and he did 2 6-month deployments on that submarine on the USS La Jolla. And but then in between the 2 deployments, they were constantly out to sea. So for the 3 years that we were in Hawaii, we only saw him probably 20% of the time that we were there.
And I didn't ask if I could share this before, but you went through a miscarriage, you've had a baby, you've had a lot of time away from family. So this was not an easy thing, especially on a sub, because you don't get the daily communication that where he is deployed now. You can have that conversation every day with some kind of technology, but on a sub you can't. So I remember as a big sister feeling frustrated because I'm on the mainland and you're on the island, and things were happening in your life that happened to all of us, but no family and no husband and no communication daily. So that just gives context for how much it takes for a family to support a military officer or military enlisted, right?
Yeah.
So name quickly the exotic part of the military is that you get to live in all these great places. So where are some of the places you've lived? Maybe some of our viewers are there watching from those places.
So when he first went active, after he got out of OCS, we went to Athens, Georgia, which, special place in my heart for Georgia.
Shout out to Georgia.
And the supply school is no longer in Georgia. It's now in Newport, Rhode Island. But he was one of the last graduating classes from the supply corps school in Georgia. And then from Georgia, we went to Hawaii, and we were in Hawaii for 3 years. And then we went from Hawaii to Italy, Sicily, Italy, near Catania.
Yeah, and we often have viewers from Italy, so I hope that awesome. Today we'll have some Italian viewership.
Yeah. Yeah, Sicily it's part of my home now.
Yeah. A lot of experiences in your life happened while you were there. You had another baby, and we're going to talk about one experience that happened there. But, yeah, your heart's in Italy. And then from Italy, you went to the Vegas, right?
Yeah, so then from Italy, my husband got sent on unaccompanied orders in Bahrain. And he was
That's the Middle East, by the way.
Yeah. It's a little island off the coast of Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And he was in Bahrain for
a year.
And I was in Las Vegas near my wonderful in-laws for a year. And I went to school to be an esthetician while I was in Las Vegas.
3 kids, went to school, husband gone a year. Amazing.
And then we went from Vegas to here. And
they're in San Diego now, but once again, there's another deployment.
So after the unaccompanied tour for being gone for a year, Jake told me, well, I won't deploy for at least 18 months. And 2 weeks after he got home from Bahrain, he came home and he said, hey, they had to do a hot fill. They moved me to a different team, and I'm deploying in March instead of, a year and a half from now. So he was only home for 6 months tops, and then he deployed again.
Which I think it's interesting if you think about a 10-year-old to 2, right? Is Reed 2? 3. 10 to 3-year-old kids who get used to saying goodbye to dad. And then mom, that is a lot of pressure on mom, because then every so often then you become dad and mom. And then you think in your mind, okay, we've got a little chunk of time because dad's been gone a year, and surprise, no, dad's gone now again, which is part of being in the military. And then the mom has to readjust, the kids have to readjust. And we could have hours of military broadcasts and conversations about the adjustment then when they come home. And I think for husbands and wives that are not in the military, we understand that transition time every day. Your husband or wife is gone, and then maybe there's this bumpy time for a few minutes when everyone comes home. But you've got to do that at an extreme level all the time.
Yeah.
And I was talking to your 10-year-old about her experience right now where you're living. There's military family around, other families that are going through it. And I asked her, do you like being in the military? April is military child. Is that
the month of the military child? Yeah.
The month of the military child. So this month, but specifically today,
yeah,
is the day of the military child. So if you know any children that have parents that are in the military, reach out to them today. Maybe take them a treat, say hello to them. I talked to her. She is such an amazing, strong girl. And I'm so proud of her, because think about it. New schools all the time, new friends all the time, thinking dad's going to be home, but dad's not home. And where dad is now, the opposite time is happening. So it's not always easy to FaceTime or communicate, because your days and nights are mixed up from where he is. So I just think it's an amazing chance today in the month of April to reach out to any kids that have military family that they're dealing with, because it's hard enough to be a 10-year-old and try to make friends, but to be moving all the time and have one of your parents gone, and then watch your mama try to deal with the stress, because she's a oldest daughter, and oldest daughters are very aware of their mamas, and then try to pick up the slack. I think that's an interesting dynamic that I think sometimes we don't understand. So before we run out of too much time, I want you to share two stories. We talked about how do we capture the importance of how the gospel can really provide a support for military families, and it doesn't always work. You know, you move to an area where there's a high population of military in a ward. That means the ward is constantly changing, and that's hard to create unity in a ward. And so when half the ward is deployed, which I think was in Hawaii, it was a chronic problem in Hawaii, that there's not priesthood support, and there's not consistency in some of the leadership, because the leaders are getting, sent off. But there was a really difficult thing that happened for our family while you were in Italy. Do you want to share that story and what how the gospel helped through a really hard time, and the military?
So we were stationed in Sicily, and we had a very small little branch there on base of members of the church, and there was only, I think, 5 families total, and we had been there about a year, and
you were pregnant?
I wasn't pregnant yet.
You weren't?
No, I was pregnant right after her funeral.
Okay.
So I wasn't
thought you had a baby.
But I had a new baby.
Oh, yeah, you had Bradley.
Bradley.
Okay. I knew there was a baby in the mix.
I think Bradley was just barely
I
one.
can't keep track of mine, too. So,
So we had quite a few trials with our family, our extended family. And then, so it was already hard to be apart from them on the other side of the world. And then in the middle of the night, one night, I got a call. We had a Magic Jack, so we had a California phone number. And I got a call in the middle of the night from my sweet sister, letting me know that our sister had taken her life. And it was really hard.
It was hard to make that phone call, too.
It was so hard. I was in Italy, and being in Italy it's not hard to fly out of Italy, but it's harder to fly from Sicily, because you have to fly from Sicily to the mainland and then to the States, and it's very, very costly, and with a tragedy that we were dealing with, time was of the essence, and of all the places for me to be,
to try to be able to get home for a funeral,
to get that news, it was such a blessing that we were where we were, because not only was the Navy just so amazing and supportive, they paid for our whole family to fly home for Meg's funeral. My branch family was just, they were truly, we had our own little family in Sigonella, and just the support that they showed me was just phenomenal. Before we found out that the whole family could go, people were just saying, even outside of the church, they were just so supportive. And that's one thing that I love about the military, is that we are really in it together. The support that you get from other military families is fantastic, and I really feel like the church is set up in a similar way. It's very, very consistent, very organized, and I love that about the gospel, about the church, because no matter where we move, consistency is there.
Yeah, there's visiting teachers, home teachers that we don't call visiting teachers anymore, and we don't call them home teachers anymore. There's ministering angels because of the church structure, but there's also, I think that's key, that as much as the military asks of families, the military becomes a family too.
Yes.
So they were super supportive, and they made sure that you were able to get home, and the family came home for the funeral for Meg, and that was really important, that we were all together. It was with suicide, it is a complicated funeral when you are talking about that, and I often encourage people, if you're listening, unfortunately, if anyone is dealing with trying to plan a funeral around suicide, to not sugarcoat it and make it not about suicide, but it was a sweet healing opportunity for your family to be, and those bonds with those people that went through that time with you, they know that story now in your life, and are they a bigger part of your relationship network, friendship network?
Oh, for sure. sweet Susanna Fomby and her amazing husband, and the Rays. I mean, just a couple of the families from that branch that I'll just have forever ties with, because they gave me so much support.
Yeah.
Love through a really, really hard time. And
as a family member that couldn't be with you, even when you had to go home back to Italy, I remember feeling so grateful that there was a network of Ministering Angels Award, a branch, and from what you had shared, people waiting to embrace you and help you transition.
Yeah. When we moved out to Sicily, before I even got out there, I had been on a forum just researching the base and housing.
I remember that.
And, Susanna Fomby was on that forum, and she private messaged me and said, "Hey, are you a member of the church?" And I said, "I am." And let me tell you, that woman is just
a force.
I hate to call her out like this, but she's just amazing. I mean, our house was set up with loaner furniture when we flew there.
Yeah, because
with
when you're
a brand new baby,
you're moving with a brand new baby to a new place, and your stuff is on a ship for a long time before it gets. You get there before your stuff gets there, and so the ward made sure that the house had food.
She
and
stocked
sheets.
our pantry. Yeah. They picked us up from the airport with our 16 bags.
Because you got to have enough stuff to live.
And I had a 3-month-old baby.
Oh my gosh.
And they drove us around for a little while till our car got there. I mean, having the church when we moved overseas was, I don't know where I would have been without them, because it made the transition so much easier. So I was so grateful for my Sigonella branch family. I mean, and there's so many families in that branch that, I mean, they were the epitome of the gospel. I mean,
which I think is crucial with the changes at conference this weekend. And for people that haven't watched it yet overseas, because my son's in Zimbabwe and he watches it this week, the changes and announcements to home teaching and visiting teaching is really in line with what you just shared. I think it's a perfect example of what ministering looks like.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not sitting down maybe and doing a visit in the house. It's making sure someone has a car to go do their errands, or put food in the pantry because someone's moving in, or comforting and mourning with someone because their sister has died of suicide, right? I know my visiting teachers, my ministering angels, were instrumental in helping me grieve, right?
Absolutely.
But then there was a woman in the ward who has become a dear friend that the thing she knew how to do was come give foot massages, and she came with foot massage oils, and we became great friends. And I think ministering looks really differently. The changes are to help us become a Zion people, and I think military families can teach us a lot about what it looks like to be a Zion people, because you have to keep moving, you have to keep starting over, you have to keep opening your heart again, you have to keep having relationships and trusting people and getting involved with each other. And I will say this, out of all of our siblings, and I have 2 sets of families, so Meg and I were part of a first marriage that ended, and
they stayed best friends.
And my parents stayed best friends, remarried, and had new families. And I have siblings on both sides that are best friends with each other because they're the same ages. And so it's interesting to me because I look at all of my siblings, and if I was to name the one that could be a military wife, it's this one. Because Shevaun really, her friendships become her family too. And she's good at that, and I think you have to have that. But I'm sure there's a lot of shy people that all of a sudden find themselves in the military, and that's not natural for them to get to know people and to try to extend yourself and know in a year you could be leaving again. And
I will say, as a military family, when you make friends with somebody that's in your new location, military spouses make friends fast, and they make deep friendships fast.
Yes,
because
you have
we know
to.
It's temporary.
You have to, yeah.
And you never know when you're going to be stationed by them again.
Yeah.
So there's a family down the street that we were with in our ward in Hawaii, and we stayed in contact on Facebook, and she and I did a preschool co-op in Hawaii with both of our oldest, actually, and Jake got sent to Bahrain, and they were already in Bahrain. And her husband was my husband's Elders Quorum president in Hawaii, and then he was the Elders Quorum president in Bahrain, and Jake served in the Elders Quorum presidency with him in Bahrain, and now they live down the street from us.
So that's key. I think that's key to what does it look like with the changes happening in the church, and what can we learn from military families about how to do that? Because I think you're right. We hold back sometimes in the church. We decide, within a few seconds if we're going to have anything in common with someone. And I think military families and especially military moms understand quickly about how we don't have time for that.
No.
We have to get in, create some trust, be a support to each other. And like you said, in the military, you could be stationed by someone again 10 years from now or 5 years from now, right? So what a God thing. So we're out of time, but I wanted you to share any last feelings you have on what you've learned about Heavenly Father's awareness of you by being in the military, and then any other thoughts you have about how to support military families better.
The perfect example that I have of Heavenly Father being aware of me is when Jake got sent to Bahrain on unaccompanied orders. It was devastating for our family because, Jake and I have a marriage that we're not one of those couples that are like, oh, good, we get a break from each other. Yeah. We want to be with each other all the time. Yeah. And Reed wasn't even one yet.
So 2 little boys that need their daddy.
I guess he was one, yeah. But, it was really hard. And so I moved to Las Vegas, and we felt very strongly that we needed to buy a house there, which was crazy because we were only going to be there a year, but we felt very strongly that we needed to purchase a house, which we bought a house while we were in Italy. We didn't even see it in person. We did everything over Skype.
Talk about being led by the Spirit and God, right?
Yeah. So we buy this house in Las Vegas. We drove across the country from Virginia once we got to the States, and that was the first time we saw our house, was when we were moving into it. And, I was struggling after he left. I was struggling. It was my first time being alone with 3 kids. I had done it a lot with 1, but with 3 kids, it was a whole new ballgame.
They outnumber your hands.
Yes. And my mind. And anyway, I was just praying. Anytime I'm really struggling, I pray for friendship. And that has served me so well in my life. And so I was praying that I would make new friends that needed me and I needed them. And so I had a lot of friends and family that were praying for me for that specific reason as well. I got a knock on my door one day. I was getting ready to head out the door. My best friend was in town visiting. And there was this tall, beautiful woman at my door. And she's like, "Hi, my name's Melanie. I live behind you, and I noticed that you had some toys in your backyard. I have some toddlers as well, and if you ever need anything, if you want to get together, just let me know." And I just kept feeling this strong feeling to ask her if she was a member of the church, which, yes, we know that there's a lot of members in Las Vegas, but...
Yeah, but it's
Las Vegas. Yeah. And so I was like, well, that's a little weird, but she was getting ready to walk away. I said, "I'm so sorry. Are you LDS?" And she said, "I am. Did my shade shirt give it away?" And I'm like, "No, I just felt like you were LDS." And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I'm LDS as well." And she's like, "Well, come to our ward."
Oh,
I had been going to my in-laws' ward, and I had been feeling for a while that I needed to go to my own ward, and was just too scared to go by myself. And she's like, "Listen, my husband and I will totally help you with the kids. We got this. Come to our ward." And she's one of my closest friends now, closest and dearest friends, and she is seriously one of the people that got me through that year without my husband. And that's just one of the things. If we had not bought that house, I would not have met her, and I wouldn't have been able to, I think, get through that year as smoothly / bumpily as I did.
Survived.
Yeah, I survived.
And thrived in many ways. You finished your training, your certification, and kept your kids moving forward. And I remember having that conversation with you, and I just think that in wrapping up, the greatest principle you just shared was you prayed for a friend, but you had allowed the Lord to lead you in buying this house that didn't feel logical, and then this cute neighbor decided to minister, not knowing that you were LDS beforehand. Right. So I think that's an example to all of us, like ministering from conference, the message we just got wasn't just to, if you remember when they announced the change in home teaching and visiting teaching, it wasn't for members. It was to help us minister to our neighbors, to all people.
Which was interesting when I heard that announcement. A lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh," and I was like, I know so many people that already do that. It's not that big of a deal to me. That's the epitome of visiting teaching and home teaching to me.
Right. And I think right there, this friendship happened because this neighbor decided to go check on a new mama that was in the neighborhood. And from that, it was an answer from God, right? It was an answer to your prayers from God, right?
He's so aware of us.
He is so aware of us. And in closing, I just, once again, an invitation, if you're new to High Five Live, especially if you know a military family, this is a great page for inspirational content and for people that are living all over the world, serving our country or their country. We're Americans, but there's military from all different nationalities and countries and governments. There's something about the gospel that creates a bond no matter where you go, and that's the goal, right? To create a family, an eternal family. And so tag someone you know that could use this message. Military families especially can use love and support. U.S. military children this month, this is their month. So the military child that you know in your neighborhood, drop off a king-size candy bar or call the mom and say, can I watch the kids for a half hour so you can go, run an errand by yourself. That's why we're in the car today, because military moms get good about hiding in the car, right? Yes. So, thank you, Shevaun, for being an example to me, because I say this all the time. She really is the sibling that had this secret power, I think, this superpower of creating friends. When you were growing up, you were like that. And I think the Lord was preparing you to be a military wife. And he knew that you were going to have challenging times, like when Meg died. But what an example of how a Ward family can be a Ward family and rally. And I hope that this message has inspired you in your ministering and inspired you to find ways to reach out to someone, even if they're not in the military today. If someone is on your mind and heart today, don't talk yourself out of it.
Don't hold back. Just do it.
Do like your neighbor and just go knock on the door and say hi.
No one will ever resent a compliment or a hug.
I love it.
Just do it.
I love it. Because you never know if your friend is right behind that door, right? Your friend that's been praying for you, or the friend you've been praying for.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I love you.
Love you.
Okay, thanks, and we'll see you next Wednesday. We have a great message next Wednesday, a Zimbabwe one. So
excited.
Join Women of Worth and share High Five Live, and thanks for joining us today.
Bye.